Hi everyone, welcome to the first installment in this series of webinars that we're launching here at Quadrant Consulting this early summer. Today's topic is product launch excellence. And product launches is of course an important engine that a lot of B2B companies are looking to optimize because, well, most companies in one way or the other are product companies. So an important topic for you guys, but also an important topic for us here at Quadrant, of course. So what are we going to do, and what are we going to talk about today? Maybe a short introduction to myself. My name is Mikkel. I'm a partner here at Quadrant and a part of our marketing practice. Today we're going to share a little bit of learning and experiences from some of the work we've done, working on product launches, but also working with companies on driving excellence in product launches. We're also gonna hopefully inspire you guys with a little bit of fresh thinking on how to do even better when it comes to launch excellence. And then of course, also allow for a bit of Q&A, so we can get some more specific input to some of your pressing challenges when it comes to product launch excellence. So very brief agenda. We're going to have a little bit of a section about why product launches fail, and they often do, but also uncover and unbox this new way of thinking about product launches tailored to complex B2B and healthcare companies. Yeah, and again, a lot of the stuff you'll see is based on research, based on experience working on launches, and supporting a lot of companies on this important activity. And this is one of the key things that we do here at Quadrant. Some of the stuff we'll share today is largely built on a recent publication that we released here in Quadrant called the Campfire Launch. So it's a quite extensive read, close to 150 pages. But that publication also includes some bespoke research that we did among 150 commercial leaders, and that's our outset. So we took the temperature on how our commercial leaders, to what extent does commercial leaders actually think that product launches work today, and if they don't work, what is actually going on here. So I'm going to share some of that research before we dive into how to rethink how we launch products. But before that, I just want to share a little bit of a cartoon just to set the stage, right? Because again, all companies are different, all launches are different, fair enough. But across some of the work we've done with clients, we see some common themes and issues that we just want to share before we dive into that research. So we've done this small poster, right? Used Midjourney AI to create a small movie poster that highlights the team behind product launches, right? And this movie poster is called, and the film, behind this movie poster is called The Recurring Product Launch Nightmare. And it involves Jonas, the global product manager, Jenny, the field marketing manager, James, the sales rep, and Jane, the product marketing manager. And then a fifth person that we couldn't remove. But anyhow, so we have these four stars actors that stars in this film. And all of them play a part when it comes to launching products, of course. The first one is Jonas, the global product manager, right? Snap, the product is ready. Yes, it's been delayed several times, but we need to get things off the ground now. So Jonas, he's pretty confident that we have a true home run of a product ready for launch. Well, the challenge is that Jane, the product marketing manager, she wasn't really briefed sooner. And now she has to develop a value proposition, launch plan, tools in just a few weeks. What the hell am I gonna do here, Jonas? And then we have Jenny, the field marketing manager, working in one of the key markets, right? She inherits this launch campaign toolbox that was developed in a rush by her colleague. The problem is this campaign doesn't really fit our market. I will have to make my own plan, my own propositions, and my own assets for my rep and marketing team. And on top of that, Jane, the global product marketer, is also tasked to do sales training. So, well, what can we do? Let's do some training. Let's book the sellers and then shower them with technical details about the product, right? That will do. that's the only thing I have right now. I have a lot of technical information from Jonas, and I'm going to shower all this information and to the reps, and hopefully they will take it in and utilize it in customer meetings. The problem is that James, one of the sales reps in one of the region, goes, well, how the hell am I going to sell this product? It's to a completely new segment that I don't know, and I don't know how this fits in the wider portfolio, right? And then we can sort of imagine what goes on, right? 6 months later, Jonas comes down from the ivory tower, asking the wider team, how are we actually doing with the launch? Yeah. And this is a little bit of a caricature, of course, right? But maybe you guys can recognize some of these symptoms of why launches are not always optimal, and also some of the things that usually go wrong. So let's use this as an outset to share some of the research that we did among 150 commercial leaders. The first, I think, key insight is that these commercial leaders stated that more or less 50% of the recent launches they've done the last 3 years have fallen short of expectations. Depending on whether you're sort of a glass half full, glass half empty kind of person, of course, you can look at this in many different ways. But nevertheless, I don't think anyone can be super satisfied with this number. So the big question is, of course, how do we actually increase the success rates of the launches that we do? Because the outset is pretty lukewarm. Let's frame it like that. Then we asked, okay, what is actually causing products to fail? And here the big sort of the big insight from our side is that it's actually rarely the quality or feature of the products, the timing, or the competitors. It's mostly commercial topics. We did not support the launch enough commercially. Lack of alignment between the different teams involved, including the product team. Value prop unclear, right? We lack focus on this launch specifically. So a lot of topics that in many ways are within our grasp and within our control as commercial launch leaders. So I think in a way, it's a positive story, right? We can address these things. It's not completely out of our hands. Another thing we looked at is how do you actually define your orientation? Are you a product-led company, a sales-focused company, or a marketing-focused company? Interestingly enough, is that companies that are actually marketing-led, while fewer of them, are more prone to be successful with launches. And as interestingly, companies that state that they are product-focused are less likely. Okay, so again, less likely if you're product-focused, more likely if you are marketing-focused. And again, coming back to the prior slide, again, if a lot of the topics and the challenges we need to address are commercially driven, having a marketing sort of led launch engine is a good way to go. And we're going to unbox what that actually means and entails for the organizational and processes that you need to deploy in order to succeed with your product launches at a later stage. So before we jump into a new way of launching, I want to share some of the classical symptoms that we see. And this is just, again, not a completely exhaustive list, but at least just to share some of these typical symptoms that we want to mitigate through a better way of launching. A lot of the stuff that we see is related to, of course, ways of working, right? One thing is that we develop value props that are not necessarily matching regional buyers' needs. So we develop sort of global value propositions that are not actually applicable at a local level because the regions are very different. We have, it might also be that we have inconsistent ways of launching products across brands, categories, or product lines, right? So a lot of B2B and healthcare companies have a very diversified business. So if there's complete inconsistency in the way we launch product across those different lines of business, it also creates a lot of confusion for the regions and is in many ways hampering the sort of the road to excellence, right? Another thing is that we develop communication packages, right? Think of your classical sort of checklist toolbox, launch toolbox that is actually not fit for the go-to-market strategy for the specific product. That's a big disconnect that we see a lot. Again, different products require tailored go-to-market strategies, and if they require tailored go-to-market strategies, of course they also require tailored communication packages, right? Another thing which is close to our heart here in Quadrant is sales enablement and sales empowerment, right? One of the big shortcomings of launches that we see again and again and again, and it's a major sort of issue, is that we don't create the right and enough material for reps to be actually able to sell this product in the context in which they operate. So they might be selling a full portfolio. They might have different segments that require tailored messaging, right? They might have different types of interaction and types of meetings that they need to be able to excel in. So as marketeers, we need to support all those interactions and situations in the best possible way. And there is no golden pitch. There is no, here's the 10 slides for this product, this will help you excel. Really tailoring the material to the actual situations. And then again, one of the other shortcomings is that the training is often focused on the product, but not necessarily the portfolio story or how to actually sell the products. So we end up using sales training as part of launches, but it turns into this technical training on the fantastic features and functions of the product we're launching. But actually that doesn't necessarily help the sales reps that much. They need to be able to understand who they are selling to. They need to understand how to actually sell whatever product we're launching. So sales enablement, a big topic, of course. And then finally, the sort of whole global local topic is a major topic, right? One of the key issues that we see is that there's no unified prioritization mechanism in place, right? That means that if we don't have a discussions about how to prioritize launches in the proper way, it's very difficult to allocate resources in the optimal way, right? So it means that all launches suddenly become important, and they might be, but if we don't have this discussion about which ones are the most important ones, it's very difficult to match our scarce resources against potential, because all launches are important, which effectively mean that none of them are important. Another thing is, of course, the whole objective and KPI setting, right? Making sure that there's a clear cascade of KPIs and objectives from all the way from global down to the local organizations. And one of the key topics here is, of course, also to look at incentives. Are the reps actually incentivized to sell new products? And do the incentive structure support our ambition and our strategy as a company? And then finally, the final thing is this limited ongoing tracking and feedback loop between local and global markets, right? There is a little bit of a tendency to treat launches as a handover, right? The global team throws something over the fence to the local team, hope they pick it up and they succeed and go run with it. But usually there's a need for ongoing adjustments to the assets, to the propositions, to the tactics, to the go-to-market strategy. And one of the shortcomings, I think, of a lot of processes right now is that it's a one-way street. There is never this feedback loop between what's going on in the field and what did we originally plan for, so to say. So these are some of the symptoms of the launches that aren't going that well. A lot of launches are also going well, of course, but if we have to look for some of the issues that we see across the board, this is, I think, a good list. So where does this leave us, right? Summing up, we have a little bit of a lukewarm success rate when it comes to launches. We have a fair list of different sort of symptoms and things that usually go wrong. It's quite clear also that marketing-led companies are more successful when it comes to launches. So where do we go from here? Our key hypothesis here in Quadrant is that one of the challenges when it comes to complex B2B and healthcare companies is that we have adopted a little bit of a consumer or Hollywood sort of launch playbook for a reality which is quite different from, let's say, launching a new line of chewing gums or launching a new film. That is at the core or at the heart of one of the key challenges, at least based on what we think here in Quadrant. What does that actually mean? Well, few launches are actually like a launch, like a sort of a rocket launch, right? Take off, right? From day one, we sell like hell. It lasts for 3 or 4 months and then dies off. It might be a launch might look like that again if we are launching a film, or if we're launching a seasonal line of chewing gum that only sort of is alive for 6 or 12 months. But in complex B2B, reality is actually quite different. So why are we applying this toolbox or this playbook built for a completely different context? And the metaphor that we use is that we believe that launches in complex B2B and healthcare is much more like a campfire. I'm going to share in a few minutes what this approach actually entails. But let's just dwell a little bit on how the context that we need to operate in as B2B and healthcare marketeers is different from your more classical consumer, fast-moving consumer goods. The rocket ship launch approach again is really about ensuring very fast momentum, and you can see to the left you have your sort of product adoption curve. Usually that means that a lot of customers will switch instantly to this new product that we're launching. It can also be that's it, the new iPhone, right? So people go instantly, or at least 80% go instantly from buying iPhone 13 to buying iPhone 14. So we need to make sure that people understand there's a new iPhone on the market, and this is the new thing for you to buy. So we're more or less replacing something that is maybe even phased out. So the adoption curve, very sort of steep curve, fast adoption, and it might go, and then it might be replaced by another product 6 or 12 months down the line, right? So this big bang approach applies to iPhone. It might apply to, again, some other fast-moving consumer goods and Hollywood blockbusters. But it's a poor fit for the context that we're operating in. Because how does a product adoption curve actually look for complex B2B and healthcare companies? First of all, it's a much more slow burn. So it's usually it's a major change for customers that show a lot of inertia and habit from that they've maybe bought this sort of alternative that we're replacing or we're upgrading or whatever for 20 years, right? So we need to be respectful of that change that is needed. So what we usually see is some sort of S-curve instead. So a bit of a slow uptick, and then a gradual increase, and then some sort of plateauing, and ultimately, of course, a decline. And this curve might take 4 to 5 years to peak, right? So why are we applying a sort of a 3-month focused approach where we spend all our energy on the first 3 months of the launch and treat it like a rocket ship, when the product adoption curve actually take 5 or maybe even 10 years to peak? So we need to change our mindset to support the S-curve instead of this boom and burst model that you see on the left. What does that require? Because it's two completely different playbooks. And it's not about being right or wrong. It's about choosing the right approach to whatever context we operate in. First and foremost, we need to start prepare and prime early and thoroughly. And we need to treat this as a commercialization project. And we need to match our investment and our resources to this sort of adoption curve. So we should not spend all our time and energy in the first 3 months and then move on to the next product, right? Again, we want to follow the curve when it comes to, or match the curve when it comes to resource utilization. And then again, we can't judge or kill a launch or success of a launch based on the first year sales alone, which is usually one of the things. We also see that a launch might be deemed unsuccessful based on first year sales target, or maybe even quarterly or half yearly sales target right after the launch. Again, there might be a slow uptick. It might be a long sales cycle. It might require change among customers. So we cannot rely on these short-term metrics when it comes to complex B2B and healthcare. And that's at the essence what the campfire launch entails. So let's unbox some of the key principles of this way of launching and what it actually entails in terms of changes compared to the more consumer-like playbook of the rocket ship launch, where we put all our energy into this 3 or 4 month campaign and sales push, right? First and foremost, it requires extensive pre-launch planning. So we call it preparing the fire, right? Much earlier, much more dedicated commercial planning. And something that needs to go on top of the product development process and start much earlier than what is usually the case. Then we need to light the fire, and being respectful that we understand there is a launch. We might need to onboard a lot of channel partners, sales reps, and so on, right? So we want to adopt a sort of launch approach, which is decoupled from this very sort of big bang launch date, and look a little bit different than how we do proper sales enablement and marketing activation. And we'll introduce a few new principles when it comes to lighting the fire or launching the actual product. And then finally, post-launch, we want to keep the fire burning. And this is one of the biggest, I think, areas of optimization, right? We don't want to move on from launch to launch on a sort of 3-month increment. We want to make sure that we are staying on top of what's going on and that we match resources to the product adoption curve. And that means that a launch is not a 3-month increment again. It might take several years. So we want to keep the fire burning. And crucially, we want to do this with full alignment across global and local teams and across marketing, sales, and product teams. So I just want to share some of the, so of course we don't have a lot of time here in this webinar, and there's a lot of things to unbox, and we did this long publication, and you're more than welcome to download that. But I want to share some of the major changes, usually related to adopting this campfire approach compared to your more classical Hollywood blockbuster rocket launch playbook. First and foremost, when it comes to preparing the fire, right? We talked about much more earlier and much more dedicated commercial planning. What we want to do is to involve sales subsidiaries and customers frequently and early in the development value prop, concepting, and go-to-market strategy, right? And all of that needs to be baked into commercial plan. And this is quite obvious, but again, we need to capture the complexity of the markets that needs to launch whatever product we're doing. Some companies actually don't have any global customers, any global launches. It's always a global launch, which is more or less needs to be sort of localized to local needs. And we want to make sure that we capture that complexity as early in the process as possible, and that should of course inform our go-to-market strategy, value propositions, and concepting. And it might be that we need several value props, or it might be we need a 3 or 4 sprint sort of go-to-market strategy. But again, we need to capture that complexity, and we need to plan accordingly early. We need to set realistic time-bound launch goals, right? What we don't want to do, again, is to have these unrealistic expectations based on hype or personal beliefs, right? Because what they actually lead to is that we end up sort of killing the baby a little bit too prematurely, so to say, right? And we don't want to do that. And maybe the first sort of only focusing on first-year sales or half-year sales after the launch is not the best metric, right? So we want to set realistic and time-bound goals as early as possible to avoid this internal hype, which doesn't necessarily translate into external traction, and then suddenly this launch is deemed unsuccessful on the hallways, and it's prematurely sort of killed, so to say. So yeah, we want to address that. We want to ensure early resource commitment when it comes to money, people, and time, and force the prioritization of both markets and launches. And what does that mean? It means, again, linking back to our go-to-market strategy, it might be that all markets are not created equal. Not all products are not necessarily equally as important for all markets. And then goes like, all markets are important. Yes, but should we have some sort of tiering of those markets and allow for different service models when it comes to actually executing these launches? Again, to match resources to potential. And if we don't do it, all markets will be treated in a vanilla type of way, which is suboptimal for all parties involved, of course. And then, of course, we need to make sure that the launch scope and investments made into the product launch are in line with the potential of the product. Again, some of the things we are working with companies on is setting this what we call launch tiering framework. So allowing us to establish a language and some sort of standardized models that allows us to classify how important is this launch. And it's a very basic exercise, super productive, because it forces these prioritization discussions. And it might be that we can set up some business rules. So we only have 1 or 2 important launches a year. That doesn't mean the other ones are important. It probably just means that those 2 launches need extra care and attention. So figure out what is the framework and how do we make these discussions around prioritization. Because again, if we don't do it, all launches will sort of regress to the mean and be treated as sort of vanilla launches, which again, in many ways, is completely suboptimal. Second piece of the campfire sort of framework is what we call lighting the fire, right? Adopting a new approach to how we actually launch products, decoupled from this specific launch date. Sorry. I touched upon this a little bit earlier. One of the biggest shortcomings of not taking sales training seriously enough is that actually research shows that sort of improper or insufficient sales training can actually lead to a delay in product launches and sales pipeline, sort of building the sales pipeline of up to 3 months. This is a super important topic. So we need to invest probably in sales training. And even though it might be a marketing-driven company, the sales channel will still be the most important channel that we have at our disposal. And really, these two-day offsites where we just shower them with technical information is not enough. We need to understand how to support the specific interactions, specific segments and situations that they will be facing, and rehearse those. What we also need to do is early in the process understand and assess seller and buyer capabilities. And what does that mean? That means seller capabilities. So where are the shortcomings when it comes to capabilities to sell? Is it product understanding? Is it sort of technical understanding? Is it value understanding? Is it customer understanding? Is it process understanding? Whatnot. Create some sort of map of how to assess where are the sellers in terms of capability to sell, and use that map to guide how you actually train. So no random sort of, again, showering of technical information, but create a clear map of where are the gaps and which gaps do we want to address with the training. The same goes actually for buyers. So this is something we sometimes take for granted, but actually buying is super difficult. So we're introducing a new sort of version or completely new category or whatnot with this product we're launching. But to what extent are buyers actually capable of buying? Do they understand the alternatives? Do they understand this new category we are driving, and so on? And what this opens up to is a discussion: should we prime the market ahead of the launch? So not necessarily talking specifically about the product, but providing the tools and the assets and the sort of hype needed to make sure that they are ready to buy once we launch this product. Again, don't take it for granted that customers understand what we're buying and understand the differences, and especially if we're launching into a completely new category or a completely game-changing technology. And again, coming back to the training, let's not just train on what to sell, the actual product, but also how to sell and who to sell to. Again, matching up with the capability assessment you hopefully also did. And a fourth topic, something we've also worked on with a few companies here, is to avoid this one-off training, but try to migrate training into an environment where it's much more of a platform. So a platform where new hires can sort of easily go in and see whatever information they need to be able to sell the full portfolio. It's also a platform that salespeople can use to go back to and have a much more tailored learning journey that deploys sort of blended learning techniques. Again, this thing about going offsite for 2 days and hoping they will remember everything, it has been shown that it's a poor way to learn. So create much more of a virtually enabled sort of platform that allows for continuous learning through blended learning techniques. Thirdly, and again, one of my personal babies here is to make sure that we keep the fire burning. Again, once the product is on the market, the adoption curve might look like an S-curve, and it might be that it's not going to peak until 5 years from now. And that should, of course, also inform and change how we actually activate the launch when it comes to sales and marketing tactics. First point is to, of course, choose sales and marketing tactics that actually support our go-to-market strategy. So if we have a very clear about idea about who we want to sell to, how we want to position it, how we onboard partners, and so on. We need to tailor the assets that we actually develop to that go-to-market strategy and never default to a standardized checklist or toolbox of tools. The tools should follow the go-to-market strategy. Another thing is that we might be launching a product, but actually buyers buy and sellers sell a portfolio. So what that means is that the product will flow into a wider portfolio of things, and they might be buying, yes, this product, but they might also be buying a lot of other things. So how do we actually update our portfolio story, and are we allowing buyers and sellers to understand the full portfolio story? Because it's very rarely in a B2B and healthcare context that these new launches live in isolation, so to say. Third leg is that once we're launching products, we also need a way to integrate these products into our lead engine. Again, less of a campaign thinking where we go all in, nice creative concept for 3 months and then die. We might also need to do that, to be frank, but we also need to consider, again, looking at the product adoption curve. How do we make sure that once people go in market, that we actually catch them? And a lead engine type of thinking is extremely effective to capture that that demand once people go in market. And this is also some of the work we're doing with companies, setting that lead engine up and making sure that we are able to catch demand once it materializes. Again, all customers will not buy in that big bang 3-month window. A lot of the customers, maybe 90%, will buy over the next 5 years. So we need to make sure that we have our net out and capture that demand once it materializes. And then again, establish this burn and establish a feedback loop from local to global to adjust messaging tactics along the way. If we're expanding the horizon and we're expanding how we look at launches, we of course also need to make sure that whatever tactics we're deploying actually work. And if the sales reps come back and say, okay, the value proposition doesn't land, or we can see certain channels, maybe they perform much better than we expected or poorly, whatever. Those types of insights and intelligence need to be fed back to the global team that then need to upgrade maybe even the go-to-market strategy, the launch toolbox, or whatever tactics we're deploying. So that feedback loop is instrumental if we are changing the horizon of how we look at launches. So to sum it up, so we only have 45 minutes, so this is a little bit of a condensed version of this campfire methodology, but I would again entice you guys to read the book. Early and more dedicated commercial planning, better priming of the organization and market for new launch, value proper material adapted to regional local needs if there's a high differences between these, and then of course a long-term engine-based approach to the market across the full portfolio. And then finally, launches is less of a marketing and sales campaign and much more of a commercialization process, right? So we also need, as launch managers, we need to look more holistically at some of the topics that we consider, right? It's not just quote unquote about material, messaging, and enablement. Some discussions around how do we actually package the product in a proper way, how do we price it, and how do we make sure that we have empowered our reps to actually get that price is also an instrumental part of putting together a proper sort of launch plan. So less campaigning, more commercialization. So where do you go from here, right? I just want to share a little bit of advice. The first thing is to understand, for you guys to understand, is to have a little bit of intellectual curiosity and do a little bit of assessment of the current state. What could actually be done better? What is not sort of optimal? Where does things go wrong? And maybe also have a bit of an unbiased view on the global-local dynamic, the sort of collaboration between different teams, also at the global team. So some sort of assessment of current state, what's working, what's not working, what could be done better, and so on. It's a really good outset for a change, a discussion about where to change. And do it as a collaborative, highly involving process. Again, there's a lot of stakeholders involved in launches, and we want to make sure that everyone has been heard. And then it's about sitting down and saying, okay, what is actually the practical levers we can pull to change how we launch? And it might be that we need some elements of the sort of the rocket launch model and some elements of the campfire launch model. It's not given that it should be either or. But again, identify whatever types of levers to optimize the way you launch, and then spend a bit of time on detailing and defining how to prioritize these different levers, because a lot of things will probably show up, right? So make sure that it's a collaborative, again, environment. Invite the people in to this process that are actually part of launches, and make sure that there's clear alignment around how do we change and in what sequence. And then start putting some of this new playbook, so to say, to use, right? Do we need new roles and responsibilities? Do we need to rewire our processes? Do we need to change our governance structure? Do we need some new tools when it comes to go-to-market planning, launch tiering, or whatnot? And do we need to set up, again, a completely new way of launching where we ensure this ongoing commitment also post-launch? And if you want to go even more pragmatic, a way to sort of narrow the scope a little bit, and that could also be an advice, is to pilot test this new way of launching on a specific product, and maybe even in a specific geography. And that's one of the projects that we're working on right now with a big company, is to pilot test this new way of working in a little bit of a smaller test environment. So that's also a way to go about these things. But it can be a quite big undertaking, because there's a lot of inertia. I think a lot of we have always done it like this, right? So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed with this way of launching if we want to change towards this campfire. But our experience is that it's also very productive, and usually also leads to much better outcomes. So that was my sort of presentation for today. Next up is the Q&A. So let's see where we are. Just need to go to this. First question is, what would you argue is the first practical step towards better product launches? I'm not sure there is a one-size-fits-all answer to this. I would spend a little bit of time together with my stakeholders to understand where's the biggest problem. So have that sort of heat map of where we're seeing the biggest challenges. Is it when it comes to developing go-to-market plans? Is it the concepting value proposition phase? Is it more on the activation piece? Is it on the sales training piece? So again, coming back to our map of different challenges, we see 8, 9, or 10 of those. I would probably, in the leadership team, on the launch excellence team, have a discussion about where is the biggest gap or the biggest challenges right now, and then put focus on that. And that's also a way to go about it, right? Incremental moves on each of these topics in a very sort of organic way. So no big plan, but more on a sort of a ad hoc basis, address some of those challenges and make sure that the organization also learns from those new experiences. So it really comes down to where is the biggest problems when it comes to launches. Any other questions? Can you still apply the campfire launch approach if you are a B2C company with a strong focus on the end consumer in the go-to-market strategy? You definitely can. And if you're a B2B and B2C company, the most important part is actually not whether you're a B2B or B2C company, because a lot of healthcare companies and pharma companies are actually B2B, B2C, and a lot of B2B companies are also B2B, B2C. What I think is most important is that there is a little bit of a complexity, and that the adoption curve of the product looks a little bit more like the S-curve compared to the sort of boom and burst, right? So if you can see that your products are live in the market and it takes a bit of time to pick up, and you will sell this product for more than the 1 year, I think, right, that's a really good indication that we probably need to change how we work. And then on the internal side, The campfire approach also, I think, allows for more careful planning, especially when it comes to sort of global companies that operate in a sort of complex sort of go-to-market structure where regions might be different. And then, of course, I think something that is close to my own heart is also the sales training piece, right? Is a complexity in the product. So do we need to? Is a complexity in the portfolio that requires careful attention to how we enable the commercial organization in the proper way. So that's, I think, is more important than whether it's B2B or B2C. We call it. We usually just take point of departure in B2B because more B2B company has that curve, but actually a lot of B2B, B2C, and even B2C companies also have a adoption curve that look much more like the S curve compared to the boom and burst iPhone model, so to say. So yes, definitely. That was actually the last question, and we are running out of time. So thank you so much for participating today. Again, I just want to promote the coming webinars. This was the first installment in a series of 4. So we're going to have a webinar on how to succeed with CRM implementation, which is, I think, an ongoing theme. We're also introducing a new concept that we call teams that sell. So my colleagues, Martin, Sixten, and Thomas, has written a book about this new way of thinking about organizing and working in the sales team and across marketing and sales actually. So very interesting topics, very sort of progressive thinking. And then finally, we'll also host a webinar around buyer enablement, so making sure that marketing supports buyers in the best possible way and allow them to buy. In make informed decisions about buying. So also a very interesting topic when it comes to content and buyer enablement in general. So first installment, and hopefully we'll see you in the coming webinars. And if there's anything, questions or anything, you are more than welcome also to reach out to me personally. So thank you and have a great day.